Welcome to The Chat. Come behind the inbound scenes of some of the world's fastest growing companies. For the past 10 years as Chatmetrics, we've had an exclusive inside view of how these industry leaders are revolutionising inbound marketing and sales across diverse sectors. Each week, we bring you conversations with top minds in marketing and sales who share insider secrets and strategies for driving inbound success. Join us on The Chat, your front row seat to the future of inbound. Jimmy, thanks for joining us here on our Spotlight series, AI, The Fine Line. Appreciate you extending the chat from our podcast. Quick couple of questions for you. Where do you draw the line between AI teammates and automated nuisance?
You look at where the money, to be honest with you, that's something that in my professional world and personal, it's going to be money, right? Anything that's financial is going on there. That's the first one that comes on board is, what level of financial decision is related to whatever this AI is going to do. And if the AI is going to do a financial decision and it has a threshold, what's that threshold going to be? So I think that's the first one. And then it's actually going to go also into medical. I think that's really where that fine line is. As I mentioned, I think chatbots are going to be great for kind of helping people understand things and move forward. And when you move in the medical world, that's a little bit different. I'm not a doctor and I won't say I was or anything like that, but the concept is that it can help at a certain level, but when it reaches a certain threshold, that's where we need to turn back to the humans. And that goes back to what I was talking about earlier, right? People are going to see that AI helps with all the general things going on there, which leaves them more time to deal with the specific things. Those are two examples, right? Money and maybe health reasons. There's other aspects I think we could explore, like education is one of them, but those are the first two that I would draw the line on.
Have you seen anywhere where it has stepped over the line, or where it's either under-delivered or been over-promised, or you've looked at it and gone, hang on a second, that's not right?
Personally, no, but I've seen some reports where the chatbots themselves have stepped over the line. That's where we started getting the hallucinations and the things that were going off in the beginning, where they stepped off the line. They didn't have the right guardrails. They didn't have the right information to pull from, and people were just using them haphazardly. I think that comes with any new technology that you get going. In general, I think that's the biggest thing that we have to make sure is that the guardrails are there, the thresholds are there, and that however we're dealing with this application, its framework allows for that dynamic approach.
So, and we've sort of touched on this, but you've worked on AI adoption across teams. How do you build trust, not fear, into the rollout?
Yeah, personality, right? That's the biggest one is across the board is you try to make it, you don't try to make the AI as human as possible, right? But you try to make the process as human-centric as possible, right? Again, I changed immediately a year and a half ago to maybe 2 years ago, because I've been really in depth with this. Like I'm talking every night, reading and learning and videos and everything like that. But about a year and a half ago, I changed my whole idea drastically. That's where I came up with the key idea, because I'm going, wait a minute. We're not, I babble on this thing, but, my project management certification, all those type things, you got to get people on board, right? I learned that at an early stage in my life when I was an SE and I was talking to technical people, I had to get them on board. I had to get management on board. They're all speaking different languages. What's the same concept of this AI? People have a perception of it's going to take their job away. It's going to take over the world. Skynet's happening, all this stuff that's going on there. You got to be honest with them, and you've got to make it human and say, listen, this is the reality. Here, let me show you. And once they do that, and you take that whole approach, it's a lot better.
Yeah. Look, you also mentioned guardrails there before, having the appropriate guardrails in place. What ethical guardrails do you think are non-negotiable when integrating AI into human workflow?
I think first off, the first guardrails are, you can't lie, you can't make things up. That's the biggest one. It depends on the scenario. Like I mentioned, money, right? You cannot make transactions above a certain threshold, if anything above that, or you can't make approvals above any certain threshold. Or you move into medical. It's like, even in the chatbots that I've met, it's talking with ADHD and, other ones that are in that level, automatically you sit there and say, you are not a doctor, you are not a medical representative. You can pull from this information and you can make it personal
Yeah.
by giving it a personality and things like that. But you sit there and put those guardrails in there saying you can't do this, and you test it, right? I mean, that's been my personal approach, and it's been even professional, is you test and you test and you test, and you don't just sign off and say, oh yeah, we tested it and we did X amount of tests and we got these results. You continue to test it. I think that's going to open up a whole new field for people.
I think there's another level as well in that you spoke about it in your post today where you had a master GPT, like the overriding.
Correct.
I think in terms of governance and what I've seen a lot, which concerns me, I think in terms of when you've got chatbots interacting with human beings, particularly in where there's a sensitivity or emotional type realm, which is probably really every conversation that a chatbot has with a human being, to be honest with you. The guardrails that I see is that there needs to be, effectively two other bots or two other agents that are supervising that agent. One is a compliance, which makes sure in terms of legal, legislative requirements, frameworks, the ethical and moral components, the value set that you want it to operate under, that supervises to make sure that its own job is just to supervise this agent. And then on the other side, I think there's the behavioural component where it's actually doing what you want it to do and its conversations are aligned with, the whole objective of the chatbot. And I think that, those two guardrails in themselves, should give 95% confidence that, there's never 100% with this stuff, but, 95% confidence that things are being done right. That's the little ecosystem. We're building it ourselves in terms of where we use AI in the business. That ecosystem is really, and I've modeled that from what we do as human beings.
And then that's it right there. People are going in this saying, oh, well, it's going to be wrong. And if it's not monitored and all this, look at the real world. Okay. Come on, guys. It's not perfect either. Right. But we have the ability here to channel that. Like in the bot example that I gave in my post this morning, right? I had to build guardrails inside of each bot just because of the environment that I'm dealing with it. But I think, if you're giving the whole vision of tomorrow, it's going to absolutely. It's all like I told you. People need to learn people management for people bots. And that's really, you're going to build an HR bot and you're going to build a monitor bot and you're going to be all these type things and they're going to monitor conversations. And in that aspect, that's going to be a whole industry, just bot monitor.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just fabulous. But look at our real world before we start, arguing aspects of the bot world. We can't fix the real world all that well. But we can fix the bot world if we blur.
And how do we do it with employees? There's a certain level of trust. And I think, the level of trust you have an employee, comes from a whole host of areas, their knowledge, their skills, their attitude, also the level of experience that they've had, past performance in terms of how trustworthy they can be, what roles they've had in the past. I think we've got to apply the same type of logic to these LLMs. At the moment, one of the other guests I've had on the fine line suggested that, if you view your LLM or your chatbot as an amazing intern in terms of how much you trust it and how much guardrails you put around it, that's probably where we are at the moment. It might be smart, and I haven't really got deep into these conversations with regards to ChatGPT 5 yet, but if you treat it like that intern and you put the guardrails and give it the guidance that it needs, and it can deliver some amazing results, but don't have your expectations too high. I think that's as humans, we're fascinated by the next bright, shiny thing, particularly when you see something that's so ground-changing and, world-changing as AI is. Yeah, I think it's easy to have high expectations that it's the magic wand. It's a good intern at the moment.
And I've heard that analogy, and I think it's great. The way I've heard it is a PhD, basically, on everything. And, but what you have to do is you have to give it the guardrails. You have to kind of give it, like, we're talking about RAG documents and things like that. Basically give it the information that you want to do. Think about it. As an intern, you sit there and say, yeah, I want you to go out back and find me everything you need to know. If you don't tell them what you're looking for and give them the information or at least some guardrails of what to do, they're not going to be effective. If you give them a little bit, well, there we go.
You just mentioned RAG. Can you explain what a RAG document is for the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So a RAG document it's basically, think about it as a document or a bucket of information that your bot can pull from. There's a bunch of technical aspects to it or whatever it's called. But the idea is it's a document or a bunch of information that your bot itself can pull from. And what I love doing is sitting there telling it, you only can pull from this document. Pull from the internet. You can't do other things with it. This is your resource. And the LLM sits there and says, great, I can do that. And it's pulling that information. example. Remember I told you that AI is fabulous for onboarding, right? For getting and learning and things like that. Well, that's what I did. I sat there and downloaded the entire knowledge base for what I was doing, APIs and stuff, threw in a PDF, they call it knowledge documents in Copilot or whatever, and sit there and said, you only can hold, and you can make things up, right? You tell it this. Don't make up fibs. Don't make up stories. Just give me specific information. And if you don't know the information, tell me that this document does not contain this information. So that's it. When somebody throws out RAG, just remember it's basically a knowledge document database. If you say, I mean, it's actually chopped up in interesting ways and stuff like that. It's information that bot, that, agent can pull from and give you information on. So, I mean, think about it. If you're, just a real estate agent, or you're a company that has FAQs or whatever is going on there, that's really where that would, the information would exist. And that's one way. Remember I talked about guardrails. That's one way you can assure that the customer is getting that right information.
Yeah, by using that information only. It prompts me to ask my last question here in this session. When you look at AI in 3 to 5 years from now, do you think we'll still be orchestrating or negotiating?
We're negotiating. Absolutely. Negotiating. And I think 3 to 5 years is being a bit, I want to use the word pessimistic. Yeah. Because I think we're going to see it in the next 3 to 5 months.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what's one thing that ChatGPT just 5 came out, right? And it's got a router in it, and the router will sit there and decide which model to use for best performance, right? So sometimes if you're typing into it, it'll sit there and say, okay, cool, this is the answer that you want. Sometimes it says, I'm going to go into deep think mode. It's starting to figure out what the best choice is going forward. Now, don't get me wrong. It's been a pain in the tail from the initial release and all those things like that, but they're fixing that's going on there. That's one step forward. And the next step is, as we mentioned earlier, where the LLM itself or the model itself sitting there going, I don't know how to solve this. So I'm going to go out to the various code sites and the other information and build my own code so I can understand and solve this. That's where we're going. And at that point, it's a different world again. So
amazing. 3 weeks ago, I built a prompt into the main custom GPT that I use. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was along the lines of, do not just agree with me. Do not exaggerate my perspective. I want you to deeply challenge me and make me convince you that the perspective or questions that I'm asking are the right questions. I hate it. It's argumentative. It disagrees.
Yes.
But I've got to say, it has taken my thought process to a whole new level in the last 3 weeks now, when, I've got an idea and asked a question, instead of just going off and saying, oh yeah, great idea. You can do this, you can do that, you can do the other. It's starting to say, well, hang on a second. Do you really want to do that? Here are some ramifications. What would you do in this situation? What would you do in that situation? And it digs down so deep. Like I said, it was extraordinarily, when I first did it, it was great in terms it was super interesting. Now I'm finding that sometimes I will avoid it and I'll go to one of the other GPTs just so that I don't have to.
Yeah, depends on what level your ego is on that day, right? If it's eggshell, then we go to the nicer GPTs. And if it's not, well, we go to the realistic one. But I mean, that is a great example. It's actually one that I've dealt with enablement, where I've worked with newer sales agents, SAs that are going on there, and they're kind of new to the aspect. Well, you know what? They don't want to stand up and kind of talk to the group because, they're kind of new and they're kind of shy. And I hate to say a sales agent shy, but you know what I'm saying, right? They just kind of big up. I go, you know what? Build an agent, have it talk to you, sit there and say, listen, I want you to be mean. I want you, or how about this build and you can't, in my example, you wouldn't be able to build interactive agents, but my example, I want one agent that's my champion, and I want one agent that's, kind of a decision maker. And I want one agent, and he's the technical guy, and I want him to be so against me that he's in bed with the competitor, and I want you just to fight me on it. And imagine being able to do that, even in my simple approach where I'm just doing the @ sign and you're going to different ones. I mean, we could get in deeper where it's actually maybe talking to each other and, but imagine that you as a person being able to do that. That's better than any training, and don't get me wrong. Like, we're going to sales next week. I fly out early tomorrow morning, and yes, they're going to have role playing and things like that. But imagine being able to, you're a newer employee or you're somebody new to the product, going home, grabbing a big cup of coffee and just battling it with this. you'll go into the next day a stronger person.
Give me all your objections. Try and tell me why you don't want it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And as a team, I mean, you can sit there and just start gathering like, oh my God, I just got a new objection, or I never heard that before, whatever. Throw into the RAG document, the database that's going on there, and people can just start hitting up against that.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, Jimmy, thank you very much for joining us on the fine line today. It's been a great conversation. Is there anything you'd like to leave with as far as AI is concerned?
You know what? Again, thank you for having me. This has been exciting. As you can tell, I love talking about it, whether it's professionally or personally that's going on there. I think the one thing that I would like to leave with the audience is that it's going to be awesome. And people sit there and go, yes, we all have to pay attention. And yes, we have to make sure we're doing things right, but it's going to be awesome. The world's going to change, and that's okay. So I think that's what I'd leave.
Great. I love that, Jimmy. Thanks very much.
Awesome.